You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. I am your host and your biggest fan, Elisa Jansen-Jones. You can follow my music education blog at professionalmusiceducator.com. And I'm also happy to report I'm now a regular columnist for School Band and Orchestra magazine. So this episode is a little bit different. I know I tend to say that a lot these last few listens, but it's especially true with this one. Typically, I bring on an expert in something specific and grill them with about 1,000 questions so we can glean all that good info they have to share with you. And I'm not saying that isn't the case with this one, because Jason is absolutely an expert in many a topic. But this time we came into the conversation with no plan, no agenda, no long list of questions I wanted to make sure we covered for our own edification. I just wanted to talk to Jason as a friend and let you kind of sit as a fly on the wall and let our wandering conversation determine the topic we centered this around. We touch on hobbies, failures, successes, how to keep energized in your career, and so many other topics. But I'm going to say for me, it all kind of boiled down to one lesson. You get to create your own life. Now, you may have a different takeaway though, and I can't wait to hear what that will be. But first, let's be honest, if it weren't for the amazing support Smart Music gives to music educators around the globe, you wouldn't have the opportunity to listen to me at all. Smart Music has a huge collection of free resources and advice on their blog. It's one of the best places you can go to search for the answers to questions like, how do I retain as many students in my band as possible? Or what ways can I help fund my program? Or 1,000 other questions that you might have. Their posts are written for you by music educators who know and who are ready to share and support you. Go to smartmusic.com/blog, not only to find the show notes for this and all of our Music Ed Mentor podcast episodes, but all of those outstanding resources as well. Subscribe and you'll get them sent right to your email inbox. Now, speaking of outstanding resources, have you discovered the Contrabass Conversations podcast yet? The host, Jason Heath, is my guest for this episode, and true to his format, we really just make this a conversation. We just start talking. Of course, as podcasters, we started talking about technology, and the thing we talked about, well, we started with how the International Music Education Summit went this year. I won't lie, there were some challenges, and the overwhelm of the last few months kind of hit me, so you're probably going to hear that. And that's where we get started. Anyway, so I was able to backdoor everything, and it turned out that the website was either hacked or there was some issue with the IP address, and it's gone. That website's completely demolished. I've had to completely rebuild from scratch. So now I've built 2 websites so that I have a backup.
Wow.
But the point is, like my whole life for 6 months, and maybe this is what we should talk about, is coming back from challenges and really realizing that you are the one in charge of your life, right?
Absolutely.
Because these last, and I might cry here, because these last 6 months have just been so hard. It's been like, sorry, I'm really tired. But it's just been one challenge after another, like being massively sick and then still having to teach full time and trying to run my conference and having to take time off to, go to TMA and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then my kids getting sick and then my husband being sick while I'm in LA trying to deal with the NAMM show. And then my dad dies and then my grandma dies and I'm having to travel to Utah to go to multiple funerals. And then my conference goes down on the first day. And I just could not believe that this just keeps happening, And then just last week, my principal at my school emails me and he's like, we don't have budget to hire you back. And so I'm just staring at my life like, where do I go from here?
Wow.
Sorry, Jason.
I'm so sorry. I'd heard about your dad and my condolences and
Thanks.
boy, that's a rough 6 months.
Yeah, I might just cut this part out. I'm such a baby.
It's completely fine.
But the truth is that
one would not know all that, from the outside. But I did read about your dad. I'm sorry about that and everything. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, but I've decided that I'm in the midst of all of this. There are amazing and wonderful successes happening. Like getting to chat with you. Like that's awesome. I've been following your podcast from the time I started podcasting 2 years ago. And here I am talking to you. And then, talking to Andrew was a dream come true. He's such an outstanding individual, And then being able to go to TMEA and meet all these wonderful people. And I really have made friends all over the world and had huge successes alongside all of these huge challenges. So maybe that's what we should talk about.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, it's tough when it all piles up like that, too, right? That's a rough. I remember when I started teaching, because I taught 7 years in the schools, and year one I was 3/5, so I was getting benefits, and I needed those benefits for my wife and I. I mean, that was why we'd gone back, and I was at the after party for our concert, which went great. It's like March, right? And I come home and there's a letter from my school saying I've been terminated. And I'm thinking, what? I was just there with the principal at this point. I was thinking, and I've like I couldn't sleep all night. This is nothing like what you went through, but I remember just that feeling of like, talk about highs right into the lows. Mm-hmm. Then of course the next day it's one of these Illinois legally contractual, because I was part-time staff so that I couldn't get tenure. It was one of those, they have to legally fire you and rehire you all the time, every single year. But I was like in this mad panic thinking my life had spiraled, that was it. What was I going to do?
And that's completely legitimate. We all hit times in our lives when we have to really open our eyes to what the situation actually is and what it merits of us. And I see this among music teachers a lot because, my first book was all about creating lifestyle and holistic wellness and stuff like that. A lot of entrepreneurial stuff, which you understand because you are an entrepreneur.
I read your book. It's very good. It's a great read. It's all sorts of like morning routines and that kind of thing. It's great.
Yeah, it's a couple years old now, and I'm kind of thinking I need to go through and do a new edit now that I've been through so much more life in just the last 2 years.
Sure.
But it was really written, the entrepreneurial perspective for music teachers. And as music teachers, and you experience this, I'm sure, we aren't trained in a lot of lifestyle stuff or even off the podium management stuff. When we graduate from college, we know how to teach bass, we know how to teach French horn, we know how to organize an ensemble and pick repertoire, and we know how sometimes we're taught classroom management. Were you taught classroom management?
No, not really. No.
Right? So we're thrown into this career without the proper set of tools, which is one of the reasons why I started my podcast, was to try and help people get more tools. And we hit this point where we get fired. We get a student, trying to hit us in class. We get all of these we have to go to work sick because we don't have another sub day because we can't afford the $150 to pay for a sub. So we go in sick. And we hit this breaking point so many times. And the question is, when do we break and decide that that's okay? And when do we re-strengthen and decide that's okay?
Yeah, it's how do you do that? I don't know. I'm struggling with that myself. It's a tough, and especially if we're talking about teaching, it's such talk about highs and lows, and especially now, moving from where I used to live in suburban Chicago to San Francisco, where you would think if you didn't live there, you'd think, oh, wow, teachers have it great, I'm sure, in the Bay Area. Not so much. In fact, San Francisco is, I might be wrong in the statistic, but it's one of the lowest paying big cities in the nation, if not the lowest. I think it's around Baltimore, maybe even a little less than Baltimore. And I don't know if anyone's checked the real estate in the Bay Area, but it's a little more than Baltimore. So, and then to make matters worse, it's a profession that's just constantly under attack, everywhere. But I see it so strongly in the Bay Area, and it's just, I don't know. I'm not doing that day to day anymore. I still think of myself as in education, but it's different what I'm doing now. But it is a tough thing to. The self-care is really challenging. That's something you talk about in your book too, like coming home and like being out of energy. It's like I'm going to go get a beer. I'm going to have a beer and like crash in front of the TV. And I can't tell you how. Something that Lisa talks about in her book. I'll link to it, but just she talks about. Trying to just have energy for yourself and for your life, to exercise, to eat well, and just to have energy outside of just what you do in that job. And that was so hard for me. I think those 7 years, I don't think I worked out once during the week. I mean, maybe in September when the weather was great and it was still light out and I came home and I wasn't living too far from my job. But most of the time I would just come back and I was exhausted, and I was the person you're describing. I would just crash. Nothing. My life was just that stinking job and commuting to and from it.
How much do you think that appreciation for our craft comes into our likelihood of burnout? I know you talk to a lot of professional musicians who have similar challenges on the job. Maybe they aren't as appreciated as a professional musician. Maybe they, there's a lot of strikes that happen with professional orchestras and stuff because they are under poor management. How do a lot of them deal with it?
Well, I think the people that deal with it, that seem to deal with it the best, in my observation, are the people who always have a new project. Even if you're in the same job and week after week and month after month and year after year, the people that have that sparkle, they're doing something new. They're building some new movie concert, and they're trying something they've never done before. They're doing some sort of project incorporating who knows what. They're coming up with some sort of crazy dance exercises for their students. I think that those are the people that find ways to constantly change it up and shape and reshape it. So I've noticed that, and I've noticed that I have a great colleague in the bass world who's been in education sort of for years and years. His name's Barry Green. He wrote The Inner Game of Music, if you've ever read that. But
I've had him on the podcast.
Oh, get out of here. You've had Barry. Okay, so again, Jason, you got to go back and scroll before you start. Okay, I did not scroll fully. Well, so I was just at Barry's camp, and it's so cool to see Barry in his mid-70s with more creative energy and new ideas than many mid-20-year-olds that I would see teaching. I would talk to mid-20-year-olds that I would think of them as having the energy of like someone in their late 60s, like, oh, well, I guess we're going to do this, and Barry's like the polar opposite. So I don't know how you build that energy. I think for me, part of it is like always having new experiences and going to conferences or taking in new things. Like I imagine your summit was like, or has been like, but I don't know, I constantly finding a way to refill that inspiration. That's a challenge. And I don't know how, that might be a hard thing to teach.
But your hobby really isn't something that you necessarily do outside of work. It's something that you do that's strictly for you, that fulfills you. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do think. Do you think you can have a hobby? Oh, well, I think I have a few hobbies that have nothing to do with work. And then I think I have a few hobbies that do tie in kind of a cool way into my work. And yeah, I think it's hugely important. Like one of my hobbies, I know one of your hobbies is trail walking, since you have a site called Trails 365, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. That actually was before I even got back into teaching music. It's been an outdoorsy kind of life for me. Yeah.
Okay, so I would consider that a hobby. One of mine is long urban explorations. I go on, either myself and then my wife and I go on these 15, 20-mile walks through. We'll explore all the weird little nooks and crannies of San Francisco, or we'll walk across the Golden Gate Bridge and go through Marin County. Or we used to walk through how dangerous a neighborhood could we go into in Chicago before we felt totally terrified, which is I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it's something that we did. So that's definitely a hobby. Nothing to do with work, but it's like, where do you want to explore this Saturday? And that refilled my reservoirs too. And then I do have hobbies like arranging. I totally think of that as a hobby, but it would bleed over into my day job, obviously. This podcast was totally a hobby, and now it's what I do. You have a strong business background. I have ended up with a business, but that was I was just screwing around back 12 years ago. I never thought of, I don't think so, at least, of monetizing this or turning it into a chunk of what I do.
Yeah, I love that. So some things that connect to what we do as a career, and some things that don't necessarily. But whatever it is that kind of lights our fire, I think we almost get that burned out of us in college, because we're so heavily dedicated to our career and our field of study and everything like that.
Yeah, I did an experiment a couple years ago. But I got a bachelor's in performance, master's in performance. Then I went back and got certified. And I went through, and I think I was going to write a blog post about this, which I never did. But what I did was I looked at all of my transcripts, and I looked at all the things I took, and I thought about what I've done in my life and what has been the most useful out of that, and what probably I haven't applied. Not that everything that we learn has to be applied but it's like, what have I made the most money from? What have I spent the most time doing? Well, my goodness, piano. I should have spent way more time on keyboard skills. I like teaching orchestra, teaching private bass lessons, arranging, all that kind of thing. Conducting, so much time conducting, singing, all these things that I wish, arranging too, so it's really interesting. And then all the like wacky web related things I've done, which I had nothing, I've taken zero things except like bumping around on YouTube, looking at things. So yeah, that was sort of an interesting experiment, just to think about like a music education, or at least what I had and what I have used.
Yeah. And there's really no need to stop learning either. And I think I cover that in my book, like continue to learn and to practice. I want to tell you about starting on ukulele, but a book that really helped me think about what you're talking about, which is looking at your past to kind of help determine your future, is Let It Fly by Pat Flynn.
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah,
it's
you
great.
have.
Yeah.
And right at the beginning, he's like, okay, so before you start a new business or a new project or whatever, you need to do some looking at yourself. And he has two different tests. And one is where you go back and you look at every job that you've had, and you list all the things that you enjoyed about a job and the things that you found fulfilling. And then you list all the things you hated about a job. So now you're starting to see like what really feeds you. And doing that, I discovered that I really like recognition. I don't like necessarily I don't mind sitting in the background and doing a lot of great work, but I really feel good when I'm publicly recognized, And so the jobs where that never happened, I didn't have as enjoyable of an experience as in jobs that did. And then he also has the 5-year test. So he says, pretend that you're in an airport 5 years from now, and you run into somebody you haven't seen in 5 years, and they ask you where you are and what you're doing with your life. And so you can go through and think, okay, 5 years from now, when I'm talking to my friend Jason in the airport, I'm going to be able to say that, I'm in the 7th year of my music education summit, and it's now a totally mainstream event, and 3/4 of music educators in the world participate in it, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then that was just really, I can't believe that I was like in my mid-30s when I discovered that. I wish that everybody graduating from college or even from high school could have that opportunity to self-reflect, and we really should be constantly reinventing ourselves. Have you discovered this idea of constant reinvention of yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think if we look at somebody like we were just talking about Barry Green, there's somebody that I look up to as somebody who's done that, many times throughout his career, or somebody like Pat Flynn, who's done a lot, or some other people in the entrepreneurial world, Tim Ferriss, or I think you mentioned. Oh, I'm blanking. Amy Porterfield, or some of these other people that are in the online business world, Elise and I know these names probably 5% of the people listening, at least to my podcast, do, but but they're good people to follow along with.
That's about right. Yep. I'll add links to the show notes on them.
Well, another person that I've got a lot of that has been helpful to me, Gretchen Rubin. She written several books, but something she talks about, I don't remember if I remember the terminology, but it's like the 4 personalities. There's the obliger, there's the upholder, there's the something, and then there's the rebel. And my wife is convinced that I'm the rebel in that. And I think she's right, because I have had a lot of different jobs, but every time I get a job, it's like, as soon as I see the job, I want to get in. And then once I get the job, I want to get out, and I'm looking to get out. And I just don't like being told. I like doing things, but I don't like being told what to do. So I've started to accept that a little bit more the last few years. And
that's not rebellion. That is self-direction.
There we go.
See?
I like that. Yeah, there we go.
It's different. You have that natural entrepreneurial spirit where you are so self-directed that you don't have to have other people tell you what to do.
I think I get exasperated by the slowness of I like the velocity of ideas. And as soon as I get it, and I've been on enough, I know you've been involved in different organizations. I've been on a lot of nonprofit boards. I'm trying to kick that habit. I've almost kicked it, but it's like death by 1,000 cuts. You throw an idea and it's just like, it's just this mangled, idea that goes nowhere. At least maybe I'm on the wrong nonprofit boards, but that's what's been so fun about my own projects is I can think about something and 3 hours later it could be launched. And I'm sure you have that streak too. Sure seems like it based on some of your projects.
Yeah, I usually do. I have a hard time narrowing down my ideas to what I can actually do, which, hey, if I'm not going back to teaching next year at my school, I guess I'm going to have more time to do those. But yeah, I have more projects than I have time. And I almost want to start recruiting people. But the problem is not everybody's like us.
Right. But not everybody needs to be though, too, because there are lots of different ways people can interface with, projects like what you do or what I do. I'm the sort of person who I present something and I think, well, why isn't it happening now? And then I get exasperated and I just try to recruit someone else to do it or go do it myself.
How many children do you have though?
0.
See? When you have children, you realize that it takes so much time for a single accomplishment to happen. And it takes constant reinforcement. Finally, my 11-year-old will wake up in the morning and shower himself without being told. You know how many years it took that?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that would give me some more patience. But we'll
maybe.
See.
But if you don't need it, you're all good.
Well, you were mentioning, I have to share this story with you because it's a story of pain, and it's similar along the lines of your website going down. Maybe not as well, maybe similar. So I was hired to be the social media, Facebook live streamer, all things to, online for this event in 2017. Which was cool. I thought, this will be great. I'll do it. And it was great. It was interesting. But what I learned doing that is you were talking about internet connectivity problems and everything. I quickly realized, my role is I'm the world's internet and Facebook troubleshooter. So I had to sit there and try to tell people why they weren't able to see the thing on Facebook. It's like, look, person from South Africa, I don't even know where to begin. It could be many things. So that was fine, though. I learned that, and even though I would have the title posted, the person playing, people would get in the comments and be like, "What's this piece? Who's this person?" So my job was just sitting there, typing to people all week. Then we get to the last event, it's the finals. And we have been building this up. And we had on the Facebook stream, I think we had maybe 3,000, 4,000 people ready to go for the finals. And I had gone all out. I had this really high-end camera hooked up to my laptop for Facebook Live, mics. We had lower thirds and everything. We were ready to go. And I'm back there and I'm ready to go with the comments. The person comes out to start to play. He plays the first note and everything shuts down. So the camera shuts down, everything, and the camera then defaults to my laptop camera pointing at my sweaty face in the back. and I think like, what are we going to, and so I trying to figure out what to do. And the only thing I could think of to do was to pick up my laptop and swivel it around and point it at the performer. And as I'm doing that, I'm seeing the sea of angry Facebook faces come in from all the people who are watching. And that, because it was on Facebook Live, it's out there. It's recorded. And one day I will make it a clip on YouTube, but I don't want to embarrass the person who put the event on. But it is very funny. It's like absolutely totally cringeworthy because it's like this high-end video and then all of a sudden swaps to me. I'm like this pixelated, like greasy figure. And then you see me turning and saying like, Jack, what do we do? And then like the thing rotates around. And so anyway, I've been there. Not, my website hasn't gone down during a conference, but I've definitely, and when I thought it was happening, I was just laughing because I thought this what are you going to do?
Okay. So I totally agree with you. When I was done crying, I laugh. And I kind of hit this like rule of three, like 3 things go bad in a row, quick succession, then it's time to laugh because it releases all that great endorphins and serotonin and blah, blah, blah. There's a reason why they say laughter is the best medicine. So how often do you hit that kind of frustration, breaking point, catastrophic failure, and then laugh? Are we allowed to laugh? I feel like society looks at us laughing at these problems and they're like, okay, you're crazy because you really should be really struggling right now.
Yeah. Life's too short to struggle too much with stuff like that. Yeah. Laughter is definitely my medicine for whatever union frustration in an orchestra or teacher, bonkersness, like getting banned from using a particular copier because during the week of a concert, which happened, or you name it. But yeah, that's laughter is usually my kind of go-to.
Yeah, it's just staying lighthearted and realizing that there are important things in life, but the majority of life is just not worth you getting that up in arms about, right?
Well, for me, I know that for something really big, like when my father passed away or something like that, I know, which happened 5 years ago, I know that I'm going to feel bad for a while. But for most other things in life, I lose an audition or I don't get a job or I get, let go or whatever. For me, not always, but generally it's like a day where I'm just going to feel really crappy. And I just sort of know that about myself after living with myself for 43 years. I'm just going to feel bad. And the next day I'm going to feel better and probably close to 100%. And the day after that, it's going to be the emotional, sting is going to be gone from whatever that thing is. But I've certainly not gotten a lot of things and felt down in the dumps and just frustrated. And I don't want to do a single thing, but I just sort of know that this will pass and give it a day and I'm going to have a different perspective and give it 2 days. And I'm already going to have put it behind me. That's me.
You have some really solid coping mechanisms. What are some other good coping mechanisms that you've discovered in yourself or in your podcast guests?
Well, it's something you talk about a bit in your book. I think we're thinking along the same lines, but just do things every day to put yourself in the driver's seat. So I try to work out. I have a morning routine that I stick to when I'm not on vacation or on the road. When I'm on vacation or on the road, I just sort of go with the flow because it's too frustrating to try to get it in. But I wake up every day. I practice Spanish. I've been doing it 251 days as of today. And I still can't speak Spanish, but I can speak it better than I could 251 days ago. And then I go to the gym. We have a gym in the building in San Francisco. So go to the gym, eat a healthy breakfast, like a real, protein and fruit and just a really good breakfast. And then and there has been no checking of email and no checking of social feeds or anything till there. And then I sit down, and whenever possible, 2 hours. I use a Pomodoro timer, and I do 2 hours of creative work without checking anything online. It doesn't matter what that is. And if I do that, I get mad stuff accomplished, and I feel good, and I feel like I'm in control. And if I hop on email the moment I wake up, I find that I'm on email all day and I'm in reactive mode. If I get up and work out and take care of myself just a little bit, and while I'm eating breakfast, I read a little bit of a novel or a self-help book or something. But no, I do read, but I just read a little bit. So I'm moving through that novel, I'm practicing Spanish, working out a little bit, taking care of myself, getting something done that's important but not urgent, and then I can let the chaos of the day unfold. And that's usually around 10 a.m.
Okay. So have you read The Miracle Morning?
I have not. I think maybe you mentioned it in your book.
Yeah, because it's all about that. There are certain things that we know we should be doing to kind of move our needle forward, to kind of be progressing our lives, like meditation and affirmations and visualization and reading and writing and creative work and practicing Spanish, whatever it is. And why don't we get those things done? It's because we try and space it out throughout our day, or we don't schedule it in. And so his premise is, if you do it all first thing in the morning, then you're most likely to get it done. Because statistically and scientifically proven, you're most motivated in the morning, which is why, I listen to a lot of TED Talks too. And you'll always hear them say, if you want to establish a pattern of like exercise, do it first thing in the morning, and just do it every day, first thing in the morning. But there's a great quote by Pedram Shojai, who is the author of The Urban Monk. And he really advocates for not checking social media or, email or anything like that for the first couple hours of the day. And the way he said it is exactly what you just said, which is that is totally reactive. Like, that's letting other people establish your outlook for the day, because it's all external feedback coming into you. But if you put it off and establish yourself as the leader of your day, your own intentions for your actions that day, then you're actually going to be better off.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I never, we too often think that, checking email or checking Facebook is something we do for us, but it's really other people imposing their will on us.
Yeah. It's the world's to-do list for you.
Oh yeah. I'm going to write that down. It's the world's to-do list for you instead of you for yourself. So because one of my favorite things to do, one of the things that keeps me really on track, is planning my day the night before. So you have a great morning routine. I love that you shared that. What's your evening routine?
My evening routine is less organized. My wife works a very kind of typical 8 to 5 schedule. So I try to have my work, whatever it is I do that I consider work, fall in that 8 to 5 box. And we don't have kids, and so we have a different setup than a lot of people. But by the time 5's done, I'm done with. Unless San Francisco Symphony calls, and then I'll go play San Francisco Symphony happily, or some gig equivalent to that. But otherwise, I don't play. I play when I'm on the road or I'm at events. But I'm trying to fit my stuff into an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday is kind of the opposite of a typical musician schedule, because musicians work when you're at night. So it's been kind of interesting. It's sort of forced me to take different projects. But so my evening routine is usually read a little bit, try to go for a walk later in the afternoon, because I start to crash out. I have no energy by the time it gets to be like 4 p.m. is not a great time for Jason. So I try to get done with my stuff 2 or 3 p.m., wrap up, tidy up, 3, 4, something like that, go out for a walk. A lot of the time I'll go meet my wife, or we'll meet at the Ferry Building in San Francisco, and then come back, make dinner, and we're early early to bed. But sometimes we go see an event or something like that. So I've been thinking about ways to tidy up the day a little bit better. I've been reading a little bit about thinking about the big question. I'm forgetting who I read this from, but thinking about the big question and kind of ruminating on that at the end of your work time. And then when you wake up the next day, kind of digging into that big question, like what's it really all about? What are you working on? I haven't done that yet. But how about you? What's your, I know you've got kids and you have a different suite of activities than I do.
Yeah, but going back to your big question thing, I love that. I'd love to find out who you got that from, because that's like relinquishing those answers to your subconscious mind. I feel like too often we're in our prefrontal cortex, our active alpha state,
Yep.
Beta state. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. Oh, you know what? I remember who it is. It's
okay.
Josh Waitskin. It was on the most recent, as of the time we're chatting, Tim Ferriss episode. Josh Waitskin wrote The Art of Learning, and that's who I lifted that from.
Perfect.
I like the idea, though.
Yeah, it's a great idea, because I think we sometimes just push ourselves to try and answer those questions when our subconscious mind is far better at that anyway. So letting you sleep on it, you actually can wake up the next morning with a lot better ideas. But so, my life has been in chaos the last 6 months or so. But usually when I'm good, my evening routine is finishing up whatever work. It's hard when you're teaching full time. You can't, work for myself during the day. So often that will end up being in the evening. I'll be recording a podcast or editing or, whatever, trying to get a deadline taken care of for writing an article or whatever it is. And then we have dinner, and I usually like to play a game or read with my kids. We get them in bed about 8. And then before bed, I'd like to go through my day, plan my next day so that I don't have to make those decisions. I really, really suffer from decision fatigue. So if I can just get all of that decided, what I'm going to wear, what I'm going to eat, what my timeline is like, what appointments I have, what time zone those appointments are in, like get all of that planned out, then, and what time am I going to wake up, and what's the first thing I'm going to do when I wake up, and what's my workout going to be that day. So I get all of that taken care of. And then I have a gratitude journal right next to my bed. So I write down little affirmations or things that I'm grateful for, or, things like that. And it's a totally separate book from my other journal or my planner book. So I have a big stack of books by my bed, but I'm a bibliophile, so that should be expected. And then I usually do something that they don't recommend, which is I have screen time right before bed. And so my husband and I will usually watch, aggravating political commentary until I fall asleep.
Well, we do that too. Usually that aggravating political commentary, it's usually like whatever serialized show we're on, whether it's Handmaid's Tale or who knows what, but that's our jam for sure.
Yeah. In the last summer, we every night would put the kids to bed and then watch Game of Thrones. Like we had not watched Game of Thrones, and my husband's parents finally pushed it on us, handed us the first 7 seasons on disc, and we're like, here, partake, enjoy. And so we binged it all summer long last year. But now we mostly stick to Stephen Colbert on YouTube, stuff like that. Get caught up on our news that way. We can only handle news that's funny. Or a funny take on the news. Anyway, but that's it.
That's the way we like our news too.
Yeah, unless I'm reading a book that I'm super, super into, and then I will read until I fall asleep.
Well, it changes everybody's routine. We're reinventing ourselves all the time, like you were saying, and everybody's routine changes. I have come up with a routine just because I have. A lot of the work I do is either for myself or consulting for different companies or that sort of thing. So I've come up with a weekly routine that I really like. And let me know what you think of this. So here's my weekly routine. So Monday Tuesday, Thursday. I wake up and I do that routine I was talking about. Then I go to a co-working space in San Francisco. And I really like that because it gets me out of the house. It makes me take what I'm doing a little more seriously. I think the quality of what I do is higher with those given hours. And I can sit down and I just order my coffee in the app and it comes right there. And they've got big monitors. I can jack my laptop in. So I have lots of big screen real estate. And I can work at home, but I live in San Francisco. Our place is small. And then I associate home with, I got to take out the trash. I got to do this. I got to do this, And so those 3 days are kind of like my computer days. And I'm usually at that co-working space from about 8 to 2. Or something like that. Then I generally come home and I'm practicing bass, or I have a couple private students that come by right after school or mid-afternoon, late afternoon. And then Wednesday, I just stay home and I do all audiovisual. I record the podcast. I'm trying to record more videos, whatever, anything like that I couldn't do in a co-working space, like what we're doing would be a little awkward. So I try to do interviews, try to edit audio. And then Friday is my do whatever the heck I want day. I leave the house and I usually just bring my iPad and I might walk 10, 15 miles, stop in different coffee shops, go to a museum, go somewhere I've never been. And that's been a good way to sort of keep my battery recharged. Also, as a podcast host, you would appreciate this. There's an event at Beta Brand, the clothing store. Beta Brand has a store, maybe their headquarters, but at least a store in San Francisco. And every Thursday night, they have Beta Brand Podcast Theater. So I've been going most Thursdays to see a podcast, and it's usually a San Francisco local podcast. But it's so interesting to see people doing their show live. So I find that very inspiring.
Yeah, that is a fantastic weekly routine. And I'm glad you mentioned the co-working space because I've kind of been toying with that idea because my office is in my home. And I love, when the kids are in school, though, and it's just me at home working, that's going to be a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. And I there could be some really, beneficial things to having a co-working space. And also, I wanted to point out, we're recording this on a Friday. So this is your do whatever you want day.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm also on vacation right now. So this is my do whatever I want. And like all rules are off when I'm out of town. So I just can't, but yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. I really love having regular routines, which is exactly why I wrote my book. Cause everybody should be like me. I'm just joking. Everybody should be like themselves. But I look forward to establishing routines. I just got back from, 4 or 5 days on vacation and I'm looking forward to just getting back in my groove again. In time to go on another vacation. I mean, vacation to a conference.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then another conference. And anyway.
Wow. So there's no way we could even, and I knew this before we got on the line, there's no way we could even begin to scratch the surface on stuff for us to talk about. So I would love to do a round 2 with you at some point, and it could be about anything or about a topic, or when the next Music Ed Summit's coming up or whatever. Or I'll bet, we were at TMEA together. I'll bet it's likely we'll be at some conference together. I'll be at the Midwest Clinic. I'll be at Maryland MEA. I think I'll be at TMEA again. I'll be at a bunch of others. So we should definitely do something. We should do a round 2 at some point.
That would be amazing. Do you go to the NAMM show?
Yeah, I go to the NAMM show in January. Do you go to the NAMM show?
I am going to go to the NAMM show.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's meet up. Let's at least, it's July right now. Let's at least meet up then. I'll be there. I work for Eastman Strings. That's one of my hats. And so I'll be there for Eastman. And it would be fun to do something. That is such a crazy show. But it would be fun to do. I am down for anything. I was thinking, should we have a plan? But I thought I knew whatever we talk about would be interesting. So
yeah, and I started by crying. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't please. I wish more people would cry on my podcast or on your or however whatever this is we're doing.
Like I even had a dream last night about my grandma, and so like I'm already so tender, and I think it's okay. It was several weeks ago. And I realized my own massive inadequacy. And so I came home and posted on Facebook just like, sometimes I feel so incredibly inadequate. And apparently I project like this massive confidence and whatever. And so I went to my community band later that week. And at the end of band, and this was when I was playing horn, I wasn't the conductor for this particular conference cycle or concert cycle. And one of the saxophone players came up and she gave me this big hug. And she's like, I saw your post about feeling inadequate. And I just wanted to let you know that it made me feel okay about myself, knowing that one of the most beautiful, confident, smart people that I know feels inadequate sometimes. So if my inadequacy and my emotional tenderness right now and my laughing at struggles can help other people, then so be it. I'll be human for y'all. How about that?
I think that's a great way to end round one, if that's cool with you.
In case you didn't notice, this episode was largely unedited. I can't wait to hear what takeaways you have from my chat with Jason. I can't tell you enough how freakishly rad he is, and I highly recommend you go catch the Contrabass Conversations podcast and visit his website and sign up for his email list too. There are links to all of the things we talked about available for you to access on the Smart Music blog. Just do a quick search for podcast or episode 55. While you're there, leave a comment and let us know your thoughts on hobbies, reinvention, and comebacks. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time with me today. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, and if you have a moment, give us a rating. It really does help put us out in front of more music educators like you. I know with so many of us starting back to school right now, there can be such a blend of stress and excitement. I want you to know, from me to you, it's okay. Whatever you are feeling is fine. You are absolutely equipped to handle anything that is thrown at you. You are a human living this human experience, and that is all you have to be. So be kind to yourself, be patient with others, and be the music teacher who keeps teaching on.